In this third lecture, we're going to continue our study and our march towards the outbreak of World War II. We've already seen that World War II began in China, Japan and China. And at this point, we've been looking at then the rise of Adolf Hitler in Nazi Germany, Benito Mussolini in Italy, and the last time we ended up with this slide of the Spanish Civil War that was sort of a testing ground, sort of like I would liken it to maybe a preseason football game where the fascist forces of Italy and Nazi Germany participated in the fighting on the side of the fascist General Franco, and they ultimately defeated the Republican government of Spain that was largely composed of socialists and communists. So a victory for the fascists. They were able to try out their troops, new weapons, and of course aerial bombardment that you see. So what we're going to do today is we're going to move forward and we're going to advance to the year 1938. Again, we're moving through the 1930s, and as you see, the title of this slide is Germany Annexes Austria. So Austria is a German-speaking nation, a Germanic nation to the south of Germany. And what Hitler did, and Hitler, in fact, as you might know or might remember, Hitler is Austrian, and he had left Austria as a young man and went to fight for Germany in World War I and then remained in Germany thereafter. So this is Hitler's homeland, and he felt that there was a great need on his parts to create a greater Germany, and that is a bigger Germany. And you can see here in this map, Austria is that sort of lavender purplish color to the south of Germany that is added on in 1938. And there was actually a vote, and that's this word that you see listed there, Anschluss. That means union or annexation. But the people of Austria were able to vote for this, and they voted overwhelmingly in favor of joining forces with Germany, its much larger, more powerful neighbor to the north. So this really, again, is a sign that Hitler, like Japan in Asia, wants to expand Germany's borders and territories to include more people and more resources. And again, annexing Austria through the process of Anschluss was a direct violation of the Treaty of Versailles. But as we saw when Hitler reoccupied the Rhineland, that part of Germany that had been taken away from Germany, Hitler had little regard for the treaty. In fact, everything Hitler was doing was to erase that treaty and the memory of that treaty, again, to give people, the German people, that is, this hope of a better tomorrow, a brighter future. And again, we'll go to the last point there, point number 4, greater German pride. So this is a really popular thing for the German people. They support it overwhelmingly. And now the other thing I want to turn your attention to while we're on the slide is this tiny area of Western Czechoslovakia, and that shows up as that sort of yellow color. There was a large German minority living in Czechoslovakia, a state that was created out of the ashes of World War I. And Hitler made the claim that that part of Czechoslovakia, called the Sudetenland, should be part of Germany because they were German people. And again, the idea is to create a greater German state and to unify all German peoples, no matter where they live, into one big state called Germany. And so that's something that Hitler is going to do. Now, you might ask, well, what is it that France, that you see there on the map, and Great Britain, France, by the way, had one of the largest armies in the world at the time. You might ask, well, what are the French and the British doing when Hitler is doing these things in the 1930s? And really, I think the answer is, simply put, that French and British are divided. They don't know exactly how to oppose Hitler, and they really are fearful of kind of challenging and confronting Hitler because, simply put, I don't think they wanted to go back to war. World War I was such a bad experience, devastating, the loss of human life, at that point, the worst war in modern history anyway. So there was a great reluctance to challenge Hitler openly. And of course, the United States itself, and we really haven't talked about the United States, is not doing much after its attempts to create world peace in the 1920s through open door trade policies, through loans, through these naval limitations agreements, the United States is largely absent because of, again, the Great Depression. So the Great Depression sort of comes back into our story again. However, let's turn our attention now to the Sudetenland. So Hitler convened or had several meetings, conferences with the leaders of Britain and France, and this was in the year 1938. And the last of these conferences, and I believe there were three in the year 1938, the last conference took place in Munich in September of 1938, and it's known as the famous Munich Conference. And the leaders of Britain and France really kind of gave in to Hitler's claims and demands for the Sudetenland. They caved, in a sense, right? And so what did they get in return for that? So these are negotiations. So Hitler gains this territory in Czechoslovakia. What did France and Britain gain in return? Well, Hitler promised that he would not claim any more land in Europe. So France and Britain give in to allowing Czechoslovakia to be carved up, and in return get a promise from Adolf Hitler. Now, you stop and think about that. I don't think we need to say much more. Of course, however, though, we're seeing history from today, so we have the benefit of hindsight. We know how the history played out, so it's much easier for us to say, well, boy, that was really short-sighted or really kind of foolish. However, we have to remember that we should read and study history going forward. So the people at the time, and especially the British and French leaders, didn't necessarily know that Hitler would break his promises, though there were many that argued that Hitler was going to do just that. Now, I want to focus on what happened, or what this was called. So the process of giving in to Hitler's demands came to be known as a policy of appeasement. And appeasement, a big fancy word, just means giving in. And the British Prime Minister, a man by the name of Neville Chamberlain, was the primary architect of this policy of appeasement, saying, okay, look, we don't really want to confront Hitler. We really don't want to go back to war, so we'll give Hitler what he wants. And in fact, he's promised us he won't do any more damage and claim any more territory. Neville Chamberlain got on a plane in Munich, flew back to Britain, and as he got off the plane, he waved a piece of paper in which he said, we have Hitler's word that he will never do this again, and he proclaimed these famous words, we have peace in our day. Peace in our day. So 1938, September, after the Munich Conference, it seemed like, sorry about that, we were going to witness peace in Europe. And here you see in these pictures Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain at Munich shaking hands with Adolf Hitler. On the right, you see Neville Chamberlain getting off the plane and waving that piece of paper in which Hitler promised no more territorial demands, no more land grabs, etc. And as I say, trust Hitler. Easy for us to say today that was a bad move, but at the time, I'm not sure that is the case. So as we move forward, we're going to then see what really happened after this Munich conference. And it doesn't take long. The year 1939, Hitler broke his promise. And again, I said, we know that now, but the people back then didn't. And I think people lived in hope. They lived with this great desire to have peace, to avoid war. Hitler broke his promise, and he annexes all of Czechoslovakia, or at least most of Czechoslovakia. Some of it was awarded to Hungary, which you see in the bottom right-hand part of the map. Hitler, at the same time, in 1939, begins to threaten Poland, and he threatens Poland because Poland is that white area just to the right of Germany. Hitler claims, as he did with the Sudetenland and annexing Austria, there are a lot of Germans that live in Poland, and their rightful home is in the German state, that is the greater German state. So Hitler begins to announce that he's interested in Poland. He begins to issue threats to the Polish government that there are a lot of Germans, they're being mistreated by the Polish government. All of this, of course, is alleged. This is fabricated, something we saw that the Japanese did. Again, another lesson I'm going to come back to again and remind you. So what Hitler does, though, before he decides to outright invade and attack Poland, he understands that to the right of Poland is the Soviet Union. Joseph Stalin in the Soviet Union. And Hitler wisely said, look, I don't like the communists, and he really didn't like the communists. Remember, he had signed a pact with Japan that was anti-communist that later Italy joined, forming the Berlin, Rome, Tokyo axis. So Hitler is committed, a committed and fanatic anti-communist, but he says, let's make a deal. So we see in this the modern Donald Trump. Make a deal with anybody as long as it promotes your interests. So Hitler makes a deal with Stalin and says, look, Stalin, let's divide up Poland. You take half. Hitler will take, I will take half. Germany will take half. And that's what they did. They signed this non-aggression pact, which surprised everybody, really. And then that's the pretext that Hitler needed then to launch his war against Poland. And he does that on September 1st, 1939. So now we're at the end of the 1930s. We've seen various events that took place in Europe, and now Hitler invades Poland on September 1, 1939. You can see the New York Times headline, German army attacks Poland, cities bombed, port blockaded, Danzig is accepted into the Reich. That is, Danzig, a big port city in northern Poland, is incorporated into Germany. At this point then, we see the beginning of World War II, because Britain and France abandoned their appeasement policy and they actually declare war on Germany. So at this point, we have war in Europe. By the way, Poland was defeated rather quickly, a matter of weeks. Hitler and the German army were going to use a new war strategy. So unlike World War I, that was a static war with little to no movement, fought in trenches where men ran across these open fields into machine gun fields of fire and died in great numbers, and then the other side would do the same, leading to this sort of static defensive war in which millions of men are cut down. The Germans had really taken time between the wars to study warfare tactics and developed both the tank and the airplane and used them to great effect and efficiently. So their blitzkrieg is literally translated lightning war. They move very quickly with aerial bombardments, tanks, followed by infantry. Devastating. The Poles were unprepared, under-equipped, undermanned, and just simply put, overrun. So at this point, we see World War II has broken out. At this point, if you have any questions, please write them down. And I guess the next question would be, what does the U.S. do at this point? Well, the U.S. At this point is going to remain neutral. And we're going to talk more about the United States and its position with regards to the outbreak of war. But the United States in 1939 officially is a neutral country, very similar to what happened when World War I began. The United States declares neutrality. So the most devastating war in human history begins in the fall of 1939. It would last 6 years until 1945. And again, the question down at the bottom, that's one I'd like you to actually answer. So stop the lecture, answer this question in writing, and bring it to class. Who was responsible for World War II? And that, I think, will be all we do for today and this lecture. Thank you very much. And our next topic that we're going to really get into then is going to look into what is the United States doing. After all, we're studying U.S. history, but I think it's necessary to understand the outbreak of World War II, both in Asia and now in Europe, and we'll then address the United States and what it's going to do. So at this point, thank you very much. And please bring any questions to class. And again, write who was responsible for World War II using the ideas and the facts expressed in these 3 lectures. Thank you.